I'd like to thank our reader, Robin Vi Carpenter Briscoe, for the fabulous reading today, as well as Gary Lynn Floyd and our music team, as they present music to us to support the message. This is week 4 of our 4-week series based upon the book, The 4 Pivots by Shawn Ginwright, with each week being independent. We're continuing to look at his information on creating a tapestry of our own lives so that we can live from how we feel and who we wish to be. Ginwright has some amazing ideas in his book, and on Pivot 4, which is from Hustle to Flow, he reminds us that in our fast-paced, achievement-driven culture, hustle is often glorified. We're encouraged to push harder, work longer, sacrifice more, all in the name of success. And this relentless battle often comes at a high cost to our well-being, to our relationships, to our sense of purpose. So what if, instead of hustling our way through life, we learn to move with the flow? And what if we embraced a way of living that's aligned with ease and intuition and the natural rhythms of life? That's what we're discussing today. But before we do that, I always have a question for you. And this week, it's what is the one choice you can make today to do less and be more? To embrace your inner wisdom and guidance, and to live in the now, listening to what your heart guides you to do. One more time. What is the one choice you can make today to do less and be more? To embrace your inner wisdom and guidance, and to live in the now, listening to what your heart guides you to do. Let me just say that when I started to read these chapters and I began with the chapter on flow, I began with a belly laugh. There's a quote by Jennifer Johns: "Clumsiness is grace in the making." If this is not a message to move from hustle to flow, I truly don't know what is. When I was 3, my daddy sent both my sister and I to dance school because he knew that I was clumsy and he wanted me to have a life that was filled with more grace. It worked to some degree, and I have to say that my daughter, when she's walking with me, still often says, "Watch your step, Mama." Actually, she says it a lot. Even my grandchildren jokingly tease me about not having any more accidents on our yearly memory-making trips. I think the truth is that I frequently am in such a rush to get somewhere or to learn something new that I get lost in my thoughts and I forget to watch my step. The hustle overtakes me being in the flow. And I think I've gotten a lot better at it as I age. Let's start with a look at the mindset we have about hustle. It's rooted in our belief that our worth is tied to our productivity and achievements. It's the drive that pushes us to constantly do more, be more, achieve more, often at the expense of our health, at the expense of our happiness. Hustle tells us that rest is a luxury, that we must always be striving, and that success is something to be chased, even if it means sacrificing our true peace. Now, that is a lie. The truth is, constant hustle is a burnout, it's stressful, and it's a disconnection from our deeper purpose waiting to happen. Shawn Ginwright describes hustle this way: the frantic energy that keeps us in perpetual motion, convincing us that if we stop, we'll fall behind. It's a mindset that equates busyness with value, leaving little room for reflection, creativity, or true connection. And what a sad state of affairs it is when we buy into the culture of always having to be doing something and forget that we're here to be whatever our deeper purpose is on this planet. You heard in the reading today about to-do list. Well, I make a lot of to-do lists, and I admit that the lists are much shorter these days. I try to keep it to 2 or 3 things because it was a bit disconcerting when I'd get to the end of the day and had all of these things still on my to-do list. And I can say that it feels great to finish up the few things I put on my list. A Course in Miracles reminds us the ego constantly drives us to do more and achieve more, but this pursuit often leads us away from peace. The ego's voice is one of fear. It's always urging us to prove ourselves, to measure up, to compete. But this relentless drive leaves us feeling exhausted and empty, not fulfilled. I know when I do, I often feel that the calm within me and the peace that I typically desire has got up and gone. It's left me behind. Anyone else feel like they jumped on the merry-go-round and it hasn't stopped lately? And yet, the hustle mindset is quite seductive because it often brings short-term goals and short-term results. More money, more recognition, more achievements. In the long run, though, hustle leads to a deep disconnection from ourselves and from the divine. When we are constantly in hustle mode, we lose touch with our inner guidance. Ginwright warns us, hustle culture disconnects us from our authentic selves. It keeps us focused on doing rather than being, on achieving rather than living. It's a form of self-abandonment where we lose sight of what truly matters. In other words, we become so driven by those external validation rather than inner truth that we stop listening to our bodies and our hearts and our spirits. We constantly are chasing a sense of fulfillment that absolutely remains out of reach. You might say we're always striving but never arriving. And that's certainly not what I want to be doing. A Course in Miracles teaches us this. When we are driven by the ego's desire to hustle, we separate ourselves from the peace that is our natural state. True peace comes not from striving, but from surrendering to the flow of love and grace. Wow. Peace comes not from striving, but from surrendering to the flow of love and grace. Let's think about ego's hustle for a moment. It's always future-oriented, fixated on what's next, rather than allowing us to fully be present in the now. And it certainly doesn't bring any peace, at least not for myself. Does it for you? Not living in the now is our first clue that we need to pivot to flow. And to live in a flow mindset requires us to surrender to those natural rhythms of life. And I readily admit that surrendering to a calmer life is not my strong point. It's time that I recognize, however, it's time that we each recognize, for that matter, a flow state of awareness is nearly effortless activity, and it produces fabulous results. Flowing is about aligning our actions with our inner wisdom and with the flow of the universe, rather than forcing things to happen through sheer willpower. Flow invites us to trust the process, to listen to our intuition, to act with intention and with presence. Ginwright says it this way: flow is a state of being in harmony with the rhythms of life. It's about letting go of the need to control and allowing ourselves to be guided by something greater, whether that's intuition, spirit, or the natural cycles of rest and activity. When we move in flow, we experience a sense of ease, of grace, and connection. We become more attuned to our inner voice, and our actions are more aligned with true purpose. We truly embrace the now, and we ignore the ego's effort to draw us into the future. Ernest Holmes, who was our founding father, reminds us that true power comes not from pushing, but from aligning with the creative energy of the universe. He encourages us to move with the current of life, not against it. When we align ourselves with the flow of the divine, we find that life unfolds with a sense of grace and ease that cannot be achieved through force or struggle. Now, I know that I want a lot less struggle in my life and a huge dose of that ease and grace. How about you? I guess the question is whether or not I'm willing to no longer fight that current of life. A river is a great analogy. Think about it. When we go with the current, it's so easy to row. And when we try to row against the current, it takes a lot of effort. There was a young entrepreneur named Mary who was starting her own business. And as any business, in the beginning, she was caught in the hustle mindset. She worked long hours, constantly networking and marketing and pushing herself to the limit. She believed that if she just worked hard enough, her business would succeed. I started my own business. I can relate to that. However, over time, Mary started to feel burned out. She was exhausted, stressed, disconnected from the joy that originally inspired her to start her business. So being a bright person, she went to her mentor, who suggested that she take a step back and reflect on why she started the business in the first place. Why had she made this journey in her life? The mentor encouraged her to trust the process and to realign with her deeper purpose. Well, Mary took that advice to heart, and she began to prioritize rest and reflection and self-care. And she started meditating and journaling and turning to her inner guidance. She realized that her best ideas came not when she was pushing herself, but when she relaxed and was in tune with her intuition. She started to trust in the timing of things, and she let go of the need to force outcomes. Her business began to grow in ways that she had never anticipated, and she found that she was very much fulfilled and at peace. Well, hello. She learned to pivot from hustle to flow. Indeed, her journey illustrates the power of pivoting from hustle to flow, because by letting go of the need to constantly strive and do, and instead aligning ourselves with ease and intuition and natural rhythms, we can all discover a more sustainable and joyful way of living and working. And as Mary learned, you can live more in the now and things can become easier, and your life and your businesses and your work will still thrive. The truth is, we can all use a dose of reality when it comes to where we're hustling in our lives, instead of aligning with that peace and care of taking a breath and living in the now. Face it, you know that somewhere in your life, you're hustling. That old adage, stop and smell the roses, became an adage because wise people realized that there was too much hustle and not enough flow. When we notice that doing is taking over our lives, that's precisely the time that it's necessary to stop and smell the roses. Well, how do we do that? I thought I'd give you a few practical ways. The first one is cultivate presence. Flow begins with being fully present to this moment. I'm curious how many times in the last 10 minutes you've been distracted. How much of my message have you missed because you weren't really paying attention? Presence allows us to respond in life from a place of alignment rather than reactivity. When we're present, we can listen to our intuition and notice the subtle rhythms of life and act with intention. Ginwright suggests, instead of rushing from one task to the next, slow down and tune in. Ask yourself, what is my body telling me? What is my heart guiding me to do? Now that is great advice. The second hint is trust in timing. Flow requires trusting that things will unfold in their own time and in their own way. Okay, admittedly, I'm not really good at that, but it means letting go of the need to control and surrendering to the wisdom of the flow. Instead of forcing outcomes, we learn to move with the natural rhythms of life. As Ernest Holmes put it, there is a divine timing in all things. When we trust in the process, we allow the universe to work through us in perfect ways. And the third tip is honor, rest, and reflection. Hustle culture devalues rest, but flow recognizes rest as essential so that we can recharge and reflect and realign with our purpose. Allow yourself to rest without guilt, knowing it's a vital part of the creative process. Ginwright emphasized that. Flow honors the cycles of activity and rest. It recognizes that true productivity comes not from constant motion, but from balance and renewal. And your next tip is align with purpose. Flow is about aligning our actions with our deeper purpose. When we move into flow, our work becomes an expression of our true selves, rather than a means to an end. As A Course in Miracles teaches us, when we align our will with the will of the divine, we enter into a state of flow where all things are possible. And aligning with purpose means asking ourselves things like, is this action in harmony with my highest good? Does this action bring me joy, peace, and fulfillment? Hey, if the answer is no, you're in the hustle, not the flow. And another tip, let go of the need to prove. Hustle is often driven by our need to prove our worth. On the other hand, flow comes from knowing that we are already enough just the way we are. When we stop trying to prove ourselves worthy of whatever, of whoever, and start living from our authentic selves, we naturally enter into a state of flow. As Ginwright puts it, flow is rooted in the understanding that we are inherently worthy. It's about letting go of the need to prove ourselves and instead allowing our actions to flow from a place of wholeness. Living in the flow is truly a spiritual practice. It's about trusting in the divine flow of life, about surrendering to the wisdom of the universe, about allowing ourselves to be guided by something greater than our own ego-driven desires. A Course in Miracles says, peace is the result of letting go of the ego's need to control and allowing the flow of love to guide us. When we move in flow, we are in harmony with the divine, and our actions become an expression of grace. The essence of flow is moving with the current of life rather than against it. And the next time you decide to join in the hustle and the rat race of life, remember these words of Ernest Holmes. True power comes not from force, but from alignment with the creative energy of the universe. When we move in flow, we tap into a source of wisdom and strength that is far greater than anything the ego could achieve on its own. So I invite you to notice where you're pushing too hard, where you might need to slow down, and where you need to listen and trust your inner voice so that you can stay in that state of grace and joy. And so in summary, how might you truly move from hustle to flow in your life? Well, remember, do less and be more. Forget striving but never arriving, and remember what matters and notice what fulfills you. Embrace the harmony of the rhythms of life. Align your actions with your inner wisdom. Be guided by something greater than that ego-driven desire. Be guided by intuition and spirit and the cycles of rest and activity. And make living in the flow a spiritual practice. Cultivate living in the now. Ask, what is my heart guiding me to do? So here's your affirmation for the week. How is it that today I so easily and willingly make one small change to do less and be more, to embrace my inner wisdom and guidance, and to live in the now, listening to what my heart guides me to do? And your challenge for the week is to make shorter to-do list and live more in the present moment of the now holy instant. Check in each day to see how you did, avoiding hustle and staying in the flow. And ask yourself each night if you followed where your heart was leading you. Let's pray. We take a deep, refreshing, nourishing breath. And in that breath, we know that God is, and that we are everything that God is. I know that I am love and joy and freedom and peace and safety and calm. And I know that when I am in the flow of life. And what I know to be the truth is that each of you has that ability to live in the flow, to live in this present moment, to live in the now, and experience the peace and love and joy and grace and freedom that you indeed are. Each of us has an ability to let go of that hustle mentality and to turn to spirit and intuition and be in the flow of life. And I'm knowing that each of us this week is choosing to live in the flow and choosing to allow ourselves to rest and rejuvenate so that we can be the creative selves that we're meant to be. And I am so grateful to know that right where we are, God is guiding us to that creativity that lifts up our hearts and has us dancing with joy. So it's with great gratitude that I release these words into that divine yes, knowing that they are already done. So I can say amen, and we can affirm it together. And so it is. And thank you to everyone who continues to donate so that we can start to find a place to meet maybe once or twice a month. And of course, when we do that, we will still have our online services. I am so grateful, and I hope you enjoy our offertory song.